Welcome to The Backstory, a podcast from the North Dakota News Cooperative that takes an in-depth look at the stories we're reporting for you. I'm Sabrina, CEO of the North Dakota News Cooperative. Joining me is Michael Standaert, our lead reporter. All right, Michael, this week we are talking about housing needs and homelessness within our communities around North Dakota. And this comes from your article that was headlined, "The Question Our Communities Need to Solve," on housing insecurity as evictions rise and prices are climbing, as well as we are losing some assistance for some of our programs. And this is, it's a very timely topic. I think we've just had our first major winter storm of the season. Plus, we're coming right out of Thanksgiving week. Most people are out wanting to shop and do all of their Christmas season shopping. The holiday season is in full swing, but there are people who are struggling with homelessness and don't know where they're going to be staying through this holiday season and for the future. So there was some developments recently that have actually caused more issues with that. So can you tell us a little bit about what you learned while writing this?
Sure. I first came to the story. I've done a couple homelessness stories over the last couple of years, and I saw that Governor Kelly Armstrong had restarted this interagency council on homelessness, and the coverage of that announcement seemed to make it sound like it was a new council, but it's basically reestablishing a council that had existed in the past from 2004, I think, to around 2018 or 2018, it started to kind of lose traction, and then it was never reauthorized. But that's kind of the way into the story. And then I was just, talking to people who have been involved in either sheltering homeless people or trying to address the issue. And, one thing that's come up is that the Housing and Urban Development Department in the U.S. Capitol has changed kind of how they will fund housing situations for homeless people over the next few years. So it's shifted from providing more funding for permanent housing solutions and then towards shelters and transitional housing, and that's kind of upset some plans for people here. It's probably going to affect the YWCA of Cass Clay the most. I reached out to them. I didn't really know about this situation. And then, in speaking with them, they're like, well, we could potentially lose around 45 of our 97 units because of this shift in funding and then how that funding is distributed. So they're concerned. They've been writing to the congressional delegation to figure out what's happening and how it will affect them. Another part of that is that there's an early deadline for applying for funding. So it's coming up very quickly, December 12th. They have to get that to the state's continuum of care coordinating body, and then the funding will be announced later. But they don't necessarily know if they have certain programs, in place, starting from January 1st or from March 1st. So a lot of these people that deal with homelessness in the state are a bit concerned about the federal funds in the next year.
Thinking about the YWCA, like in Cass County, losing nearly half of their units. One thing that you pointed out in the article too is that they serve a lot of women who are escaping abusive situations, and many of them have children with them. And I know just from things that I've seen either online or from following them or from some volunteer work that I've done myself, but their units are usually full. They don't have normally empty units that they can afford to just not have anymore. They have women and children who need these units. And so that's going to be a pretty significant impact.
Yeah, if there's not any way to step up, if the states or some other organizations can't step up, they may, have to lose those 45 out of 97 units. I think their emergency housing is not affected, but they get, about 7 different grants, either federal or state or other avenues. So they're trying to figure out, how they can preserve those units and whether, others can step up in to fill that gap.
So what about HUD housing? Housing to help lower income people get into homes and get out of homelessness. How is that going to be affected more?
I'm not sure that's really affected by this.
Okay.
So this shift is mostly about homelessness. Some other HUD programs seem to be unaffected. This is specifically with distributing money to states' homelessness efforts. So I don't think that's going to affect other people. I'd have to go look at from what I saw. It was mostly with homelessness. It was not anything with other HUD funding.
Good. Okay. So we don't want to be, we don't want to, oh gosh, I can't think of the word.
Alarmist?
Sensationalizing or causing people to worry when they don't
Yeah.
need to, who are in these type of housing situations. But for the homeless coalition, as you said, that had actually ran for several years. And in the research that you did for the article, did you see, was it successful in the past and then it just kind of dwindled?
So they had developed a 10-year plan to address homelessness, and then there's been various movements in the legislature to help address some of these things. During COVID, with all the federal funding coming in, I think it just kind of stalled out because all that funding was coming in, and the Department of Health and Human Services was distributing funding for kind of rent support and things like that. That's actually something that's going to go away. So that's also a bit of a concern to some people that there's so many people did utilize this rent support that came out of the emergency rescue plan. So, with that going away, people are seeing, rising numbers of homelessness just in general over the last couple of years. The other concerning thing to a lot of people is that evictions keep continuing to rise, and this also filters into home insecurity or also affordability of housing. So just having, if some of these people can find more affordable housing, it might make it easier for them to pay their rent. So I think that's one thing that's been happening. I know in between 2020 and 2024, the average number rose from about 1,700 to over 2,500 per year in evictions. So that's something that's a bit of a concern to people who are following this and dealing with homelessness on a daily basis.
Yeah, that increase, that can be a significant increase. And I would imagine too that North Dakota has got to not be an easy state to be homeless in. I mean, especially this time of year when we're dealing with the weather and to not have shelter, that's got to be very devastating.
Yeah, no, sometimes in the past, when I've run, on trails through the woods, I would see sometimes people, camping out in, December weather. And it's like, okay, isn't there a place for someone like this to go? And the capacity for a lot of the emergency shelters is, pretty full. So it's often, people don't really have anywhere else to turn. If they do become homeless, they might be in their car or camped out somewhere, and it's not a very good situation, definitely.
Yeah. So what are some things that you think that we should be watching for, hoping for as the governor's coalition continues?
So they will be looking through, the plans that had developed from the past council, and then trying to chart a way forward. And I think, people are excited in the provider community about this being reestablished because it kind of gives focus to okay, getting all of these people together to try to tackle this issue. That's something that hadn't existed for a few years, and I think they are hopeful that this will have momentum going forward. Whether it will just kind of repeat, what was done before, that's another question. I mean, they had 10 years of work, and it didn't really make a huge dent in addressing homelessness. So I think people would like to see more long-term solutions to addressing this. I mean, there's so many factors that go into, people becoming homeless. There's all kinds of, behavioral health and addiction factors on one portion of that population, and then there's others, related to domestic abuse that the YWCA does address. Other organizations do address that, and then just in general, the affordability of housing, lower income housing and issues like this is another factor that is driving homelessness. So I think there's hope that they'll look at this and try to figure it out. Whether they will or not, that's a open-ended question. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, we'll see, and we'll keep an eye on it as well. And kind of switching gears just a little bit, this is one of those stories where at the North Dakota News Cooperative, we have the opportunity more, and I say we, it's really you doing all the work on this, but to go in deeper on these issues that we maybe, read a small article or get a few seconds worth on TV news or whatever, but at NDNC, you really go in deeper and look at the underlying issues and talk with several people. And that was one thing that I found really interesting in this article was how in depth you took it.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what we're here for, and I get more time to look into some of these things than other people do. So, I saw the initial reports about the Interagency Council on Homelessness being established, and that led to talking to people who were kind of better informed to what I was looking at. I actually went to this Walk a Mile in My Shoes event here that the United Way had, talked to people there. And then just in talking with people over time, and then also there was a Human Services Committee meeting at the Capitol. So I kind of followed along with that. And some of these things were discussed in there, especially about the HUD part that I hadn't really heard about, and you don't hear about in the initial story about this council being established. So, and then in talking to people after that, just finding out how big of an issue that would be for them if that funding changes, which it has. I think having that time to kind of think about the story and also talk to people and let it develop, also just helps to get a deeper story.
All right. Thank you, Michael. And of course, those deep stories are only possible because of the support that we get from listeners like you. If you want to help this kind of nonprofit journalism continue in North Dakota, right now is the perfect time to donate. We are in the middle of the news match season, which means every contribution is doubled. Your gift helps us keep digging into the issues that matter, from housing, education, healthcare, and all of the stories that shape our communities. If you'd like to support our work, you can make a donation online at newscoopindy.org/give. Again, that is newscoopindy.org/give. Thank you for listening, and thank you for helping to keep strong local news alive in North Dakota. And once again, the article that we talked about today is headlined on our website as "The Question Our Communities Need to Solve." You can read that story on our website at newscoopindy.org or in one of our local newspaper partners. For the North Dakota News Cooperative, I'm Sabrina Halverson. This has been The Backstory.